with great deference to our friends from the United Kingdom who I thought might be here today, kings and queens and rulers of all kinds, even presidents, as it was pointed out, represent a certain kind of power that flows from the top down and is usually backed up by military might, money, status, even violence. To be sure, the best kind of political leadership is a form of public service. That's what we look for in our best political leaders. Yet all too often throughout history, that's not what we see. All too often we see that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and the last and the least of these, for whom Jesus cared so deeply, are left behind or forgotten. But what if the writer of Ephesians was making a different kind of point? What happens if we turn royal theology upside down? Early Christians living in the Roman Empire certainly understood just how arbitrary and brutal the power of kings could be. They saw what Romans did to Jerusalem in 70 CE and had experienced persecution and exile themselves. They knew very well what it meant to live under the power of the sword and the power of those who would lord it over them. But what if the Lord of the universe was not Caesar or any other king, no matter what it looks like in the world? But what if the Lord of the universe was their teacher, their Jesus, the very one who taught them to turn the other cheek, to love one another and care for those who are forgotten? Could it be that the point of this use of royal theology was not to remake Jesus into a king, but to remake our understanding of God, ruler of the universe, into the image of Jesus? Listen again to those words from Ephesians. I pray that the God of Jesus, the anointed one, the God whom Jesus revealed, may give you a spirit of wisdom and revelation as you come to know God, so that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know what is the hope, what is the actual hope to which God has called you, and what is the immeasurable greatness of God's power for us who believe. And what kind of hope, what kind of power is that really? The hope to crush your enemies under your feet? The power to lord it over others? I think we all know the answer to that question. The kind of hope, the kind of power offered to us in Jesus is radically different than the kind of power we're used to seeing, in which we are taught to seek in the world. That kind of power, the power that dominates others and seeks one's own personal or national interests before anything else, leads to indifference and cruelty among some, and a sense of powerlessness and hopelessness among others. The power we see revealed in Jesus is a different kind of power. It seeks to lift up the lowly, create communities where all are cared for, find joy in service and generosity, to be willing even to suffer for the well-being of others, if that's what it takes to bring about God's realm, God's beloved community on earth. When the King of the universe, if you have to use that image, when the King of the universe wears a crown of thorns, the mark of one who knows injustice and suffering, it's a sign that things in the world are not as they appear to be. This has political significance in our time now, as it did in Rome then. There's a statement that's been floating around by Walter Brueggemann and a bunch of different people from different traditions called Reclaiming Jesus, a confession of faith in a time of crisis. And in it they say, if Jesus is Lord, as the church has confessed through all these centuries, then Caesar was not, nor any other political ruler since. If Jesus is Lord, no other authority is absolute. And when politics undermines our theology, we must examine that politics. The church's role is to change the world through the life and love of Jesus. The government's role is to serve the community, to serve the common good by protecting justice and peace, rewarding good behavior while restraining bad behavior, When that role is undermined by political leadership, faith leaders must stand up and speak out. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state.